Christina, the floor, or should I say the dance floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Laurent. And I'm actually going to continue with this dancing image. So if you imagine two people dancing together, two persons dancing, and if one of them is dancing salsa and the other one is dancing waltz, you can imagine that there will be problems, and they will step on each other's toes and they might collide, and it will not look very beautiful. But none of them is actually doing anything wrong. It could be perfect salsa and it can be perfect waltz, but it just doesn't work together. In many ways, it can be the same thing with academia and business. Within their different contexts, they do dance to different tunes. And so within their different contexts, that is perfectly fine. And these differences, they can range from incentives and goals to timeframes, for example. To give some examples on how that can be, for example, in academia, you often have the view of publish or perish, whereas in business, intellectual property protection could be really important and a strong desire to patent. And in patent law, you have a novelty requirement, and if it has been published before, it won't be possible to patent. Another example are the time frames, often neglected when discussing innovation, that when people are trying to work together and they have different time frames, they will collide. There will be differences in differences. So, for example, to describe this, imagine that you're walking down a busy street and there are a lot of tourists there. The street in Paris, perhaps, or Barcelona, and people, a lot of them, they are tourists and they have all the time in the world and they're stopping at the shop windows and they're looking at the buildings. But you yourself, you're trying to walk down that street, but your time frame is that there is a meeting in 5 minutes and you don't want to be late. So you're trying to rush down that street. You will collide. There will be some types of conflicts. And that often also happens when, for example, in an innovation process, one party has a view that we're going to finish this innovation process and enter into a market within 1 year, and another has an image that is going to take longer. But in order to tackle societal challenges, we need to join forces. We need to work together. So in order to do that, we actually need to start dancing the same dance. And as you can see from my family name, it's a Finnish family name. So if we're going to start to dance tango, of course it has to be a Finnish tango, not an Argentinian tango. And we're going to hear about 3 different best practices where these differences have been tackled. So where they have aligned divergent goals for common benefit. First off, we're going to hear about an example from Germany, geared towards industry, the Fraunhofer model of performance-based basic funding. And after that, we're going to hear an example from Spain, public-private collaboration through the Technology Corporation of Andalusia, CTA. And after that, we're going to sum up with an example from Portugal, Collaborative Lab for Cybersecurity and Cyber-Physical Systems, Vortex. But first off, we have from Fraunhofer, I'm going to introduce Caroline Steiert. She is Senior Legal Advisor, European Affairs from Fraunhofer-Gesellschaft. She has 16 years of experience at Fraunhofer in IP exploitation and technology transfer, in particular in drafting and negotiating license, cooperation, and other exploitation agreements related to intellectual property and software law. With her, she has Simon Ammer, and he is Deputy Head of Techtransfer Strategies, also at Fraunhofer-Gesellschaft. So over to you, Carolina and Simon.
Thank you very much, Christina. And thank you, Laurent, for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. So I'm going to start with a Hello. Thank you very much, Christina, for introducing us. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning to the audience. My colleague Simon and I will guide you through this presentation. I will start and present Fraunhofer in very short and then give you a quick overview of the Fraunhofer model from the external perspective. Okay, let's start. First slide, please. As you probably know, Fraunhofer is the largest organization for applied research in Europe. It has been founded in 1949 and nowadays operates 76 institutes and research units throughout Germany. What is the mission of Fraunhofer? Applied research is the foundation of our organization. We partner with companies to transform original ideas into innovations, and at the end benefit society and also strengthen the German and the European economy. We also promote a well-balanced combination of excellent research with in close cooperation with universities and application-oriented development. How do we approach this? Next slide. Okay, thank you. Fraunhofer owes its success to the so-called Fraunhofer model. In concrete, I would like to present. Fraunhofer spends around 30% of its budget to conduct preliminary research. That comes from the federal and the state lender governments in form of institutional funding. The other 70% of the income derives from contracts with industry and from publicly funded research projects, such as federal, state, or EU-funded projects. Now, as a systematic incentive system, the internal allocation of the basic funding to the individual institutes is largely related to specific performance indicators. And each of the Fraunhofer institutes bears responsibility to generate and use project results to ensure significance in the scientific world and also in the end to foster its commercial prosperity. Now I will hand over to my colleague Simon, who will explain the Holy Grail of the internal governance of the Fraunhofer model in a detail. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Caroline. It's always a pleasure to explain the Holy Grail. Thank you. So what we just saw right now is often considered as the Fraunhofer model, but it's the external perspective. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 funding mix. From an internal perspective, this is just the result. So how does Fraunhofer achieve two-thirds third-party funding? And basically, there is Fraunhofer is getting a basic funding by German federal and state governments. That's the first third of this Fraunhofer model of the Fraunhofer finance mix. And this is allocated directly to the Fraunhofer institutes on the basis of a distribution key that is fed by performance-related indicators. And the most important indicator is the amount of contract research an institute is able to acquire from companies and to work for companies. And there are several other indicators which are also integrated, but the contract research, the amount of contract research for companies is the most important indicator. Other indicators are, for example, the number of spin-offs. So there's also the possibility for some management decisions and for setting goals. But the distribution key is creating an orientation of all Fraunhofer institutes to the needs of potential clients and to valorization opportunities. It's kind of the identity of every Fraunhofer institute, and every institute is trying to make as much contract research as possible, because then it's rewarded with more performance-based funding in the next year. So, or 2 years later. And so even the development of new competences follows or also is focusing on future application scenarios and is always orientated on what is basically the market need, what is the need, what is the opportunity for practical use of the build-up competences. So please, next slide. Is this working? Yes, definitely it is. Fraunhofer, we have here the preliminary figures for 2021. Fraunhofer creates a contract research for enterprises of 228 million euros in 1 year. And with a number of customers of nearly 6,000 companies, 6,000 different companies, and there are nearly 60% of them are SMEs. So they are accounting for 210 million euros, but it's over the half of all Fraunhofer customers is SMEs, and Fraunhofer is offering some competences they actually need and they actually want to make contract research with. And Fraunhofer also creates 515 patent applications and created in 2021. And Fraunhofer created 30 spin-offs out of Fraunhofer institutes. So there is a huge number of knowledge valorization, and this is all managed, or it is all implicated by the Fraunhofer model of performance-based funding. So please, next slide. How is this model working, and what are the success factors and what are the challenges? The success factors, and there are external success factors and internal success factors. Of course, it is a structure of the industry. You need a culture of contract research, because otherwise you can't do that research in contract relationship. You need, or especially for Fraunhofer, it's a really success factor to have a very strong Mittelstand and a very strong Mittelstand enterprises, because that's basically, as you saw, we have a lot of SMEs benefiting or contracting with Fraunhofer. That's our main number of customers, and of course a technology orientation in the industry and a strong industrial sector in general. Also, it's very important to have a political willingness to subsidiarity, because you need an independent competence development at the institute level. So you can't define everything by a corporate strategy, because the institutes which are responsible for the outcome and which are rewarded with the funding, they are also they need the freedom to develop their own competences. So you need the subsidiarity of independent competence development. And there are also challenges, of course, a lot of challenges for a Fraunhofer model. And the biggest challenge always is to keep the balance between the different sources of funding. Because if you imagine it like a tree, you have the basic funding like roots, and then you have public contract research, and that's like the trunk of the tree, and you have the contract research for companies, for enterprises, that's like the fruits. And if one of these parts is not working, everything else won't work too. So if the basic funding is not enough, the whole tree will dry up. But if, on the other hand, we are just doing contract research and do not build up new competences, it will not work sustainable over the time. So you always need to handle this balance. Then you also need to keep a balance between corporate strategy development and the independence and responsibility on the institute level. especially if you talk about disruptive innovation or you talk about really new topics which are on the research agenda, then you also need a kind of corporate strategy. Then that's interconnected with that, it's the integration of mission-oriented innovation policy goals. As if the institutes are working independent and working on the market pool, you need mechanisms to integrate such goals by a corporate strategy. And of course, it's very demanding for new institutes if you are not already working in this Fraunhofer model of financing. Then a new institute needs very much strategic support and a long time, because it's not typical in research to work in that circumstances. So please, next slide. But overall, Fraunhofer is following a role model, and the role model is the namesake of the Fraunhofer-Gesellschaft. It's Joseph von Fraunhofer, and that's what we want to achieve. We want to be researchers. We want to build up new competences. We want to discover, and we want to research on behalf of industry and state. We want to invent, and Fraunhofer was an inventor. He invented new methods for processing lenses. And Fraunhofer-Gesellschaft is an inventor and inventing a lot of things. And you also need an entrepreneur mindset. And that's Fraunhofer was, as he was a direct and partner in Glassworks, and Fraunhofer-Gesellschaft is by Fraunhofer model and by creating more than 500 spin-offs by 2020. So now we are at 530 over the last 20 years, and more of 95% of them are still present on the market after 3 years. So thank you very much. And Fraunhofer is dedicated to impact.
Thank you very much. And I have a question for you. And the question is, would it be or is it difficult to copy your funding model, or could that be a best practice that can be exported to other countries?
Actually, it was already exported to several countries and to several institutes all over the world. Of course, it's difficult because it's not just one small thing to do, because you have to build up all that financing, and you need the strong industry. You need the demand for and the culture of contract research. But it is possible. It needs time, and it needs. Of course, it also needs some consulting, but everybody is invited to contact us at Fraunhofer. We offer to consult about the Fraunhofer model, and we also offer to help building up Fraunhofer models all over the world.
And I can imagine that trusting in the system is also an important factor to really rely that this actually works and is something in it for everyone. I have a question that's probably more for Carolina, since you're working with intellectual property. So how about licensing patents? Because there were a lot of patent applications we could see. Is Fraunhofer the patent holder, and are you then licensing, or is someone else the patent holder?
Mostly, no, in general, it's Fraunhofer the patent holder. And we grant either non-exclusive or mostly non-exclusive licenses, but also exclusive licenses on certain technical application fields. This happens mostly with contractual partners, with industry partners that charged Fraunhofer with some development. And then if the developments we make during this or in the scope of this development cooperation, then it's clear that the partner would like to have an exclusive license on in the patents or in the IP that is generated during this project, with the focus of its field of application it needs.
Thank you very much. And the handling of IP is often a core of making the most of knowledge. And with that, I thank you, Caroline and Simon, and we will move over to the next best practice. So I would like to introduce Fabián Varas Sanchez, who is Chief Technology Officer at CTA. Over to you, Fabián.
Thanks, Christina, and hi everyone, and thanks for having the possibility of introducing CTA and sharing how we have increased industry research collaboration in Andalusia, the southernmost region of Spain and Europe. For those who might not be familiar with Andalusia, it is one of the biggest and most populated regions of Europe. Its size is very similar to those of Portugal or Hungary, and even bigger than Austria or Ireland. And it comprises 8.5 million inhabitants. In order to understand what is CTA and really why it was created, we have to get back to 2005 when the CTA model was defined. CTA was created to tackle three main problems of the Andalusian economy compared to the Spanish and the EU ones. The first problem was the reduced amount of R&D carried out within the region. The second one, possibly even more relevant, it was that the public sector was the main R&D actor. Andalusian companies carried very little R&D. And for us, the most important factor was that there was very limited technology transfer from academia to business sector. Basically, there was little connection between the R&D carried out by the public sector and the innovation carried out by companies. It was clear that something had to be done, and that in order to boost the poor annual increment or R&D expenditure, a shortcut was necessary. New and innovative solutions had to be put in place. Next slide, please. That is why, as I mentioned in 2005, the Andalusia's regional administration teamed up with some of the major Andalusian companies and decided to create a novel institution, following the public-private partnership thesis and JTIs and joint undertakings models. A private foundation was established, so we had the flexibility and action capacity that the public administration usually lacks. Our board was set up considering a majority of seats taken by the company's members of our business cluster that has grown from 40 initial members to more than 170 today, but also having the representation, views, and support from the regional administration and the 10 public universities in the region, which account for a very high percentage of research groups within the Andalusian region. Next slide, please. There are a number of aspects that make CTA unique. Some have to do with our philosophies or with our structure, and some with our services. Possibly the harder part has been to show to each new regional administration the usefulness of CTA, and that it was more efficient with them having a support but non-interfering role. The previous situation showed that Andalusia needed different results, and that obviously if you want to get a different output, you have to do things differently. Many companies did not carry out R&D because they did not see the benefits of it. We had to get away from considering R&D as a cost rather than an investment. In this sense, competitiveness has been the key. Although there are many ways for a company to become more competitive, most CEOs these days understand that the best way to maintain or increase that competitiveness through time is by technology differentiation. Words can be powerful, but money tends to be even more powerful. So our model relies on our own funding scheme, a private one. This was set up with the member company's fees and the mainly initial public funds provided. Our funding scheme is, as we say in Spain, the carrot in front of the donkey. Is the bait we use to attract companies to carry out R&D activities. This debate is also combined with know-how transfer approach. In order to retain our funds, companies do not only have to submit their projects and go over an objective, impartial, and transparent selection and funding process, but they get our advice in how to go from a project idea to a well-defined project plan. Is that support, let's say coaching, that grows capacities within the companies and gets them to be able to strategically plan and efficiently execute their R&D plans, obtaining the desired business competitiveness. If all that I have mentioned till now is important, even more is that companies could not innovate alone. It might be clearer now, but back in 2005, we were already certain that the shortest way to R&D success was not for companies to invest large quantities of time and money researching, but to collaborate with those that had the knowledge and could transfer its technologies to the companies, the universities' research groups. Therefore, within our funding scheme, companies must subcontract Andalusian universities for at least 10% of the budget. It is a forced scheme, but one that is fast at aligning industry-academia activities. One final key to CTA's model is being a multi-sector technology cluster with a specialist in 7 technology areas that can support companies in all kinds of projects and that allow us to focus on what the enterprises really require. Next slide, please. In order to make a difference, we provide a range of services to our company members. Regarding R&D project support, in line with the mentioning learn to do approach, we help companies to mature and set up proper R&D teams or departments, capable of setting R&D strategies, select the most beneficial projects, and carry out an appropriate planning and execution. Of course, we help companies to find the right travel partners, either within the industry or academia, to supplement their capacities, and also to find the best scheme for their projects, not to adapt their projects to a specific goal, which might force them to do things that they do not want or they do not need. As mentioned, our funding requires a scientific collaboration with a real aim to technology transfer. And being a private scheme also acts as a springboard to also obtain funds from public funding calls. Within a cluster, it would be nonsense not to exploit the networking opportunities. We do this in a number of ways, from technical seminars to scientific capabilities discovery sessions, even promoting business opportunities among the member companies, with other relevant companies, and also with the regional and national level with the boards of members, the universities, and the regional administration. Moreover, being a CTA member is being part of the most valued association for innovation in the south of Spain, positioning the member companies as a reference within their sectors. And we can use that position to facilitate members' access to media and valued events. Next slide, please. Some of our achievements can be seen on this slide. Over these 16 years of activity, we have organized more than 500 events and workshops. We have helped to define and fund more than 5,000 projects, of which around 20% have requested our funds. The rest have all been directed to other calls, mainly public funded ones. Of those more than 1,000 projects submitted, we have funded around 70% of them, a relatively high approval ratio. And this is not because our assessment process is easy to go through, but because the continuous project support to grow members' abilities. The 743 approved projects so far have mobilized more than 543 million euros, and we have helped them with 184 million euros of CTA's funds that have meant the collaboration with 359 research groups and over 1,000 researchers. Next slide, please. Now in 2022, but with data from 2021, we can see the evolution of Andalusia's indicators. Strong increase in R&D expenditure and the percentage of the company's contribution, well over the national levels and over the EU indicators. This clearly shows that CTA has been successful at closing the initial gap. Last slide, please. just simply say that thanks for your attention, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions and get in contact to share further details on the CTA model.
Thank you very much, Fabián. And the first question is that when you have SMEs that are going to work together with researchers, what would be the greatest barriers and challenges for that type of collaboration?
Well, I would say the most important barrier is to know each other. I mean, most SMEs are just trying to create a business, trying to get in the market their products and services. Maybe they are technology based, but they are strongly focused on what they do on their everyday life, let's say. Mm. So almost all the time, they don't know what capabilities all the research groups and other institutions can provide them. But our experience is when they know each other and when they see the value they can provide to them, they are very quickly on taking it on and collaborating with them, getting very important and very successful projects.
So the difficult thing is to get them to get to know each other.
Absolutely.
And with that, I thank you, Fabián, and we'll return with more questions later on. But I will present the last example, the last best practice. And I would like to introduce Rodrigo Maia, CEO of Vortex-CoLab. Over to you.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you all, and thank you to the European Commission for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here presenting Vortex and the Vortex-CoLab and this initiative that we have started just 3 years ago. So I would like to ask to move to the next slide. So what is Vortex? What are we? Okay, the Vortex-CoLab represents an ambition, okay, created by the Portuguese government in establishing collaborative laboratories established in Portugal that would create a connection between industry and academia. So how to create a dance floor to tango between industry and academia. The Vortex, we decided it is composed by 5 entities, 2 industry, 2 companies, and 3 universities, public research centers in the universities. And this combination is devoted to develop applied research in the field of cyber-physical systems and cybersecurity. As you all know, a vortex is a physical phenomenon that is created when you make the collision between 2 surfaces that are operating at a very different levels of pressure. That happens that way in the physics, and it was the phenomenon that has inspired us for the vortex. We know that when we try to bring together academia and, as you well explained in the beginning, Christina, the challenges and the speed of the academia when they are doing R&D, and you bring the challenges and the acceleration of industry. If you collide the both worlds, you will create these disruptions in pressure that for us are the perfect environment to create a vortex. And this vortex for us should be an acceleration vortex, an applied acceleration vortex. And as we can see in the picture, looking to what is the technology readiness level, we frame ourselves in this level within the range from 4 to 8, where technology is either not yet mature or it is getting ready to become mature and to be deployed in the market. The 5 institutions that compose the Vortex is one large company, Capgemini Engineering, a startup incubator company and a startup accelerator company, which is Beta I. And then we have 3 research centers, which are the top-notch centers in Portugal in the fields of cyber-physical systems and cybersecurity. Steiert in the Polytechnic University of Porto, Nova Links in the Nova University of Lisbon, and the Nestec, which is in itself a large research center, but it has specific research activity on the domains of cybersecurity and cyber-physical systems. So next slide, please. So what is our value proposition? How do we operate? So pretty much inspired in the model that our colleagues from the Fraunhofer Institute have presented, Vortex aims as well to establish a model of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So we are driven by the corporate ambition of delivering breakthrough research to the industry by having contract research, but we need to be fed in by the fundamental research which is coming out of the universities, accelerated in our programs, and then delivery. So we are looking for these technology breakthroughs in order to explore new challenges driven by this business vision, delivering applied research and making proofs of concepts and MVPs, boosted by an academic mindset leveraged by researchers and engineers, but with a substantial larger percentage of researchers than what the normally R&D department in a company would have. We are driven by our passion to innovate, to be above and beyond the expectations of our clients and also our partners. And our intrinsic model of operation is based on the collaboration that we are able to extend from our partners, academic and industrial, and our internal research teams. Next slide, please. So how do we leverage this cooperation? If we analyze this diagram that has basically 2 dimensions, one on knowledge dissemination, what do we do to expand and what do we do to externalize, not only grow but grow externally, and then on the competitive solutions, how do we co-create on one hand, and how do we provide high value R&I services on another hand. So on the top right corner, we have the acceleration in tech transfer. Okay, that's when we are able to expand through the value of R&I services, making the bridge with our partners, making the collaborative talks spin out of the mature technologies that we are able to push forward, and apply our know-how in technology bricks in practical use case. The market bridge, which is just below, is when we are making contracted research with clients and sometimes the partners for delivering to them concrete outcomes in the fields of research that they are looking for. On the teams, on the expense, on the left side, we have our people. Okay, we have a team which is composed by internal teams as well as what we called our ambassadors in the research in the public research institutions that we have, making the bridge. We have the involvement of the experts from the associates in the Vortex actions, and we have the joint PhD and master thesis that we work with them in order to further develop our teams. Also on the co-creation side, not only with the partners but also with third parties, there is the competitive funding aspect, which for us is a must-have. Going back to the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 model, where we need to attract additional funding, not only because it's a way of funding the activity, but because it is a bridge to establish connections and activities with clients and partners, and then deliver contractual research to them afterwards. Next slide, please. How do we apply this applied research and innovation? So we have divided this model in four major pipelines. The breakthroughs, and this is where we are normally giving support to our partners that are the research institutions that are doing fundamental research and low-level TRL research. And here is where we have our PhDs, theses, and master theses that we are working with them. Then we move to the applied research, okay, a level up in the TRL, where we are trying to make tangible developments on the technology breakthroughs that have been identified in the lower TRLs and application of that knowledge in selected use cases. The third level is acceleration. So when we see a certain type of a certain technology that has been that shows promising, we try to make the bridge with industrial use cases, accelerating this technology to be industry ready. Okay, so this is the application, is the proof of concepts, the prototype. In here, what we are looking for is how we can develop already contractual research with clients and partners. And finally, on the last level is the tech transfer, where we are basically shipping the knowledge that we have in order to combine it in tech transfer activities, either by supporting the design of minimal viable products or prototyping in the form of advanced consulting or IP licensing. Next slide, please. How do we have established internal methodologies to make this process more streamlined inside the Vortex, from the problem need to an ideation and scoping phases, where we build a vision and a viability of a certain idea, and then moving it to a validation where we do the prototype and developing in a round circle. This is not a single cycle approach. All of these can have several iterations and several passes to each one of the phases in order to achieve the best solution. Next slide, please. So what are our fields of innovation? So we have started our operation, and being a very, very young institution now with 25 researchers on our team, we have started initially focalizing on the cybersecurity and cyber physical systems for the automotive industry, especially focus on what is the embedded systems inside the car, the connectivity with the infrastructure in the network, and also the how to control and how to perceive the world which is around us. And so we have three main areas of research: one for perception on the edge, one for safety for embedded systems, and the third one for security for smart distributed systems. Our plan is now expanding to other areas, aerospace and medtech, which are areas that we further would like to expand to the future. Final slide. And here we just want to explain the four pillars of the cooperation. So between the academic expertise, the competitive funding, the tech transfer, and the acceleration cycle is the way that we boost the cooperation between the different partners and the Vortex Association itself. Okay. So I would skip this slide because we can conclude the presentation, moving to the final slide. Thank you very much for the invitation once again, and I hope it has been a good explanation.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. And I especially like the fact that you had the word passionation, which really relates to tango on your slide. With this type of collaboration or collaborative lab, Do you have specific issues on IP, or have you found models for making the IP issues work as well?
So our model of IP is most of the collaboration with the industry, with the partners, is established. So if we bring something which has a background IP from their side, they capture the background IP. We just leverage on the foreground. Okay, whatever we accelerate. Sometimes the IP is already public. Okay, so it's common practice in universities to develop things to the open source community, but then they don't have the capacity to maintain and to explore it. Okay, and then it's better to have a vehicle such as Vortex to maintain and to explore assets that become as an open source community, but then you need to provide services on top of it. And if you have an institution such as Vortex, you are able to maintain that because we already have this focus of providing business services.
So, and I have a question for all of you, and we have to do with researchers here, and researchers, as we said in the beginning, they have their own incentives. How do you convince researchers to align their research with industry needs rather than just focus on the sort of the perspective on the inside academia perspective? Shall I go to you first, Simon, perhaps?
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, if you're doing research at Fraunhofer, you know where you do it. So you need that kind of inspiration and of passion, as you mentioned, and you need to identify with the Fraunhofer mission of doing applied research. And so, so Fraunhofer model is motivating everyone at Fraunhofer to do so, but it's also such, it's such part of the identity of Fraunhofer that it's basically not necessary to do an extra motivation, because every Fraunhofer researcher is already motivated to align the research to industry needs and to societal needs. That's very important.
So they already know that they're going to dance the tango.
Yes.
Yes. Would you share that vision for you, Fabián, at CTA?
Obviously, if you have researchers who have that passion and have that clear mindset, is obviously very useful. In our case, I would say we are not that far along the way. So first of all was the funding. Obviously, in our case, as I mentioned, there is a subcontracting research for the research groups. So obviously that's a potential tool. But also I would say there is more something which is more important along the lines of what Simon was saying. For researchers, it is very valued to be able to see their technologies on the market rather than just on the lab. Okay, so that's what we try to get to that, let's say, feeling or passion about being able to go around the streets and say, well, look, I'm behind that. I was able to do to help that becoming a reality.
And what's your perspective, Rodrigo?
So I think that sharing both visions, but giving an additional, it is also pretty much about the culture that you create in the institutions. And in our case, from the beginning, the mindset is there. We are there to make business. Okay, so the first, because it is very important not to create a culture which is a public funded research center, but becomes the vision of something where the vision is, okay, if we don't get business, we will be, the model will not operate because the funding will extinguish, and we have a small slope, and then we die. So the vision since the beginning is that the reason why we exist is because we need to create things that we need to bring to others, and others will buy from us. okay? Or they will buy the services because we have the knowledge to deliver to them. And so I think it's that culture of being, we are doing research, but with the purpose of making money out of it. Okay.
And another question is that we often describe here that we have a situation where people from academia are moving towards the business side or the entrepreneurial side. Would it also be beneficial if we had more of a culture where people are actually have an experience from business of being entrepreneurs and then going back to university, research institutions and so on to get new innovation ideas? Could you start off with you, Carolina?
Sorry, I was muted. Well, I think this is very difficult at the end. It would be a great idea, but it's really what drives Fraunhofer as well and makes the research very excellent is that young people come from universities, academia, and then come to Fraunhofer and apply their knowledge. And so we put emphasis on this transfer, that we have always maintain a close cooperation with the university, so that the research activities remain excellent. But the other way around is when you go out and have worked as entrepreneur, you have other challenges to manage than research. I think they are sometimes far away from what research, really academia research is. So I imagine that's not so easy.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else that would like to add something? Rodrigo.
Like to just give. I think diversity is key. Okay, so I don't think there is a model for what is the path. I think the diversity of paths is what makes us grow better and stronger. Okay, obviously having people that have experienced startups in the entrepreneurial world is good. Okay, gives stamina, gives experience. Having, as Carolina was saying, having the freshness of bright minds coming out of the university is also good, because they still have the innocence of not having the experience, and therefore they are willing to fight on different wars. And I think that combination and diversity is all. Okay, so as much diverse tracks we can combine, the best, because that's what drives stronger organizations.
So it's not just salsa and waltz and tango. Then you have the cha-cha-cha as well.
Christina, if I may just to add very briefly, I obviously agree with what my colleague said before, but this is a view focusing on improving one individual's capabilities, whilst I believe the key, the more efficient way and the most powerful activity is the ecosystem ability. So it's not about everyone knowing what to do or knowing how to do everything. It's knowing who is able to do it better and faster for you. Okay, so whether it's a formal or informal ecosystem, is a faster, as I said, a more powerful way to achieve this kind of objectives.
And I think that actually answered to some extent the question that I had, because you described different models and how you make those models work. But do they also work when we come to disruptive innovation, for example? Or is there a problem in handling disruptive innovation within these models? Could give that question to you first, Simon.
Yes, thank you very much. It's it's very difficult to plan disruptive innovation, but we try. So you need both. You need in this model you need to to have a steady contract research with increasing technology development. And we also need, and that's something which I wasn't talking a lot of, because we also have corporate programs at Fraunhofer where we try to have the possibility for disruptive ideas and to create to open opportunities for teams, for ideas which are not in the main track of contract research, and that's often ideas which are creating spin-offs in the end. So it's a kind of different way of business of knowledge valorization to business, and we use another track. So we try to integrate this also in the model by, for example, rewarding the number of spin-offs for Fraunhofer institutes, but you need to be very aware of that.
And we're soon going to end this session. And the first, I'm going to ask 2 questions at a time. So first of all, how do you develop a common language between industry and academia, which has been pointed out during these last days as challenges? And the second one being the academia-industry cooperation during the current conditions. Are the more difficult? We have the COVID, of course, and then also the war in the Ukraine. So does that lead to new challenges? Yes, Rodrigo.
Taking on the second one, I think that it is not just on the industry, university, academia relationship that the conditions have made life a lot harder. We have seen that cooperation by itself, and the fact that we moved to a more digital world with COVID has created major challenges on the way we boost and we work together and we cooperate. I think that for a period we have lived on credits from the past relations that we had, but it is important to rebuild relationships. And yes, we can be extremely productive using all the digital means, but the cooperation, the interaction with people, the discussions on a room with a whiteboard is fundamental to really be able to develop cooperation. And with us and our partners is clearly something that, okay, for a period we were able to do it just with the credit of what we had done before, but definitely is something that we need to boost for the future. And I pass to the others.
Yeah, Simon.
Maybe regarding first part of the question, there are 2 very important things if you try to develop a common language with between academia and industry. The first thing is that you have to know you are not talking the same language, because that's often the problem. Everybody is thinking in its own in his or her own language, and not realizing that the counterpart has another language. So the first thing is to realize you are not talking the same language. And the second thing is, if you realize this, then you need time and you need to talk. You learn other languages by talking and by trying to get different perspectives. So you need the time for talk. You need the direct contact. You need to interact as often as possible. That's the basic for a common language.
Thank you. And I would like to, yes, Fabián.
Just very quickly, I completely agree with Simon about his views on common language. Regarding the second question, just to add that let's say that knowledge is possibly the only value that grows when it's shared. Okay, so I agree that there is a view for having some protectionism, and that might be necessary in some areas. we have to be very, very careful. Europe is strong these days due to its philosophy about sharing knowledge. We have to have that in mind.
And with that, we are going to sum up and some short final statements for all of you, starting with you, Carolina.
Sorry. Well, I would say that focusing on the Fraunhofer model, it is the key really to ensure permanent and consistent market orientation to Fraunhofer's research and development work. So that's really our success foundation.
And a final statement from you, Simon?
Yes, thank you. Science, research and development can make a difference. And it has the possibility and the necessary tools to improve the world, but that's also a responsibility. And therefore, we can, as Fraunhofer, we aim at creating a real impact through knowledge valorization. And that's something we really we really need to be excellent at, and it's also a kind of excellent science. And as Fabián told us before, there's nothing more satisfying for a researcher as if your technology is in a product and if it's changing the world.
So, final statement, Fabián.
Well, from my view, as I said during my interpretations, things have to be done in a different way to get different results. And for those regions that have not been able to make innovation a pillar of its business competitiveness, a model based on coaching, know-how, and technology transfer and ecosystem creation is the powerful tool to achieve it. So I would say that it's certainly worth a try, and I would encourage others to try to do so.
Mm. And a final word from you, Rodrigo.
So, being the youngest kid on the block, our experience is being a 3-year-old institution. We are still giving our first steps, but the experience of having the ability to create collaboration between academia and industry with a mindset of, as someone is saying, valorizing the knowledge and not just creating knowledge. Okay, we are not there just by the knowledge itself, but we are there because we want to valorize the knowledge and the technology that we create. And I think that is the important message, is that and I've been a researcher in a research institute, and I was very pleased with what I was doing there, generating knowledge and so on. But it is a different rewarding, okay, when you are able to convey what you research, what you build, into an outcome, into a market exploitation, into being part of something which is being commercialized by someone else. We didn't have the experience yet of spinning out companies, okay, out of the research that we do. We are too young, but we have that vision, okay. One day, okay, our dream is that one of our technology breakthroughs, our technology bricks, can be one of the spin-offs, like the Fraunhofer gave the examples on their side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for sharing your best practices, giving